I leave the country with a very good feeling that I'm leaving a better place than I found it. And I will always remember, I think I was actually the first one to arrive from the diplomatic corps to the Asmin Center.
Where does your disappointment lie?
There is a space for everybody, and I think that personally, any help that Guyana can get, it makes me happy. Be it from China, be it from the United States, be it from ourselves. Yes, that's a question difficult for a diplomat. If the past has been perhaps difficult, the future is going to be complicated. I think this country needs a strong opposition. I really hope that the opposition in this country will become more structured and more capable of fulfilling the role, the very important role that any opposition has to have in any country.
What is the personal feeling like leaving?
Yes, that's a difficult one. It's mixed feeling. I'm happy and sad.
Thank you for agreeing to have this interview with me. Just around this time in 2019, you took up the post as the EU ambassador to Guyana, and after about 3 years, you are bidding us farewell. Could we recap what are some of the achievements under your stewardship for both Guyana and Europe during that time?
Well, first of all, thank you, Gov'T, for this opportunity to say a few words. I think that in terms of achievements, we have achieved a lot. Guyana has also achieved a lot, even more. I leave the country with a very good feeling that I'm leaving a better place than I found it. And among the main things that we have, that you have achieved, is the preservation of democracy and the strengthening of the institutions of Guyana. And of course, the new economic prosperity that I think is already starting to show, but that is going to be even more stronger in the future. So both politically and economically, I think the country is on a takeoff moment, and nothing would make me happier than to see that this potential is realized as quickly as possible. And on a personal basis, well, not a personal, but on a professional basis, we have also achieved a lot in the delegation of the European Union. Only the day before yesterday, we launched the first EU-Guyana Chamber of Commerce, but we have done much more over the last 3 years. We helped as much as we could to the efforts to preserve democracy, and I think this was an area where I'm proud of what the delegation of the European Union collectively did. But we have also delivered important amounts in terms of budget support. So we released, I think it was €9 million in the end of 2020, and a similar amount last year. And this comes on top of all the other contributions that we are making to the development of the country, through the government, but also through civil society. We work a lot with civil society, so many achievements in that area as well. And perhaps last but not least, we have probably the most important achievement is that we have made the EU-Guyana relationship stronger than ever. I really believe so.
I'm happy you ended on that note, because I was going to ask you to offer a comparison as it relates to when you started your tour of duty and now as you prepare to depart. How do you think the relationship between Guyana and Europe is positioned?
The relationship has always been good. We have been here present for 50 years. We celebrate our 50th anniversary this year, so it's a very good, very important moment. But now it's better than ever, as I said. And I think that when I came, it was a good relationship, as I say, but it has really increased a lot. It has been enhanced politically, first of all. We have an excellent relationship with, not only with the authorities, of course, first of all, but also with all the sectors of the Guyanese life, but also economically. The imports and the exports from and to the European Union have doubled or tripled in the last 2 years. So we are seeing an economic relationship which is also blooming, and then the development cooperation, which is also very important for us. We have been providing development assistance to Guyana for many years, and I'm happy to say that we will continue to do that for the next years. We have secured an envelope of 21 million euro for the next 6 years, and we are going to use it to support your efforts to preserve the forest, to preserve the mangroves, to have more inclusive and sustainable development.
Excellent. Just to dwell a little more on your time here, what would you say is the highlight of your time spent here?
Yes, well, without any hesitation, I would say that it was 2020, the developments that took place then, the fight for democracy that the country did, I insist on that. It was the Guyanese, and it was the Guyanese from all sides, from all political parties. Most Guyanese wanted a democratic solution to that crisis that lasted 5 months, longer if you count the time before the elections. But the Guyanese did it, and this is by far and we contributed a little bit, but it was a Guyanese effort mostly, and this is without any doubt the most memorable moment that I take with me. I also will remember the fight against COVID and the cooperation that we had. I'm happy that we were able to provide some vaccines to the country. The country was also very generous with the delegation, and I have to say that. We were offered the vaccines in the same terms than any other Guyanese, and I'm very grateful for that. And on our side, we also, as I said, we also managed to deliver some vaccines, not only vaccines actually, but other materials, and also to refocus some of our cooperation projects so that they go now to alleviate the impacts, the longer-term impacts of COVID. So that was probably the second most memorable moment. And then there were so many that I could not recapitulate them all in just one interview.
Right. It's interesting that you recounted the 2020 protracted election period, because I think if there's anything Guyanese will remember you for is your participation in that period. How do you remember it from your perspective, if we could go over it? I don't think we've ever really, well, you yourself, you've ever really gone over those events. From your own perspective, how did that period unfold for you? And I'm pretty sure you've had enough time to form your own conclusions. Would you indulge us in sharing those conclusions?
Of course. No, it's. I think about that period quite often, and you know, as the starting point is that I admire the way that most Guyanese citizens behaved. There were some episodes of violence, unfortunately, that is very sad, but mostly the process was peaceful. And I can tell you quite honestly, if with this level of frustration, with this level of stalemate, I don't know if people in my country would have been so patient, so restrained. So I admire the Guyanese from all sides for that. Now, yes, we played a little bit of a contributing role, and it was a contributing role to preserve democracy. We never, and we don't do that, we never went for one party or another. We just saw a situation in which the foundations of democracy were threatened. And all we did was to try to keep the democracy going. And as I said at the time of the recount, what we wanted in the end of the day is to see that whoever won went to government and whoever lost went to opposition, no matter who it was. But the counts had to be clear, the accounts were clear, and I'm very happy that in the end the solution was almost completely peaceful and certainly completely democratic. I was impressed, since you are asking me, I was also impressed by the junior staff at GCOM and by the party agents who were very generously giving their time and going through those processes which were very tedious and very cumbersome, but which needed to be done, how professionally they behaved. And this makes me think also that you know, sometimes something good comes from something bad. And the good that we got, and that Guyana got, is that there was a new generation of people who suddenly got interested into politics and who realized that politics is more than one party or the other, that it is first and foremost about the preservation of democracy. No matter what is your party, you have an interest that the result of the elections, whatever it is respected. And I will always remember, I think I was actually the first one to arrive from the diplomatic corps to the Ashmin Center, simply because somebody told me that things were not going well. We also had an electoral observation mission in the field with 50 people from the European Union, and I was in contact with them, and I could see that things were not going well. So I spent this famous, I think it was the 3rd of March, all day in the Ashmin Center, and I could see that things were getting very complicated, and at some point I was afraid that violence was going to happen, and very concerned, actually, very concerned for the country. And then,
you spoke about the good that came from the bad.
Yes.
But where does your disappointment lie?
About the process?
Yes.
Well, I mean, the fact that you had to wait for 5 months until the question was solved is in itself a disappointment. But you know, I don't feel disappointed by the result or by anything, but by the whole process. I wouldn't call it disappointment. I would say that, yeah, when things started to go wrong, I felt sorry for the people most people in Guyana who had gone to vote, trusting that their vote would be taken into account. One man, one vote, one woman, one vote. And I felt sorry for them, and I felt very worried, as I was saying, that things were going to go bad. I was not disappointed. No, disappointment wouldn't be the word. I was perhaps shocked that the attempts to change the result of a democratic election. I want to say something also, that I think that it was a very small group of persons who were trying to do that, very small. I think most people in every party, including in the then governing coalition, were not happy with that.
Ambassador, the EU has been supportive of Guyana politically and economically, and I don't think we need to go over that. But last year in 2021, a visiting EU official, Javier Perez, he had committed support in helping the Guyana government tackle corruption. I want to know if there has been any formal requests, any formal offer, and what has the buy-in been like?
Sorry, can you say what official proposed what?
So I was saying in 2021, the EU official Javier Perez,
Oh yes, of course, yes, sorry, I didn't catch the name, yes.
Promised to support the Guyana government in fighting and tackling corruption.
Yes.
I'm asking if a formal offer has been made, and what has the buy-in been like?
Yes, indeed. That was our deputy managing director from Brussels, and by the way, we also had the pleasure to welcome our managing director recently. There have been more visits than since 10 or 15 years, high-level visits, which are very useful, not only because they allow people to meet each other, but because they allow for practical results. One of them, indeed, concerns the fight against corruption. We are in, I wouldn't say daily, but constant contact with the government on things like the fight against corruption, not only that. And I think yesterday there was a debriefing that was attended by my deputy, but also, I think more importantly, we have put aside some amount that we can use to support the efforts of the government of Guyana in fighting corruption. We know how committed they are, and we know that there is a whole framework of legislation that is addressing this problem. But of course, it is important that this legislation is implemented and that the institutions that deal in the fight against corruption are efficient and effective. And things can always be improved. I think that I want to be very clear on that. With this new time of prosperity, with a lot of money, sometimes comes a lot of problems. And one of the problems that has come to other countries is an increase in corruption. And I think that it is very encouraging to see that the government is aware of that and that they are working to prevent it and to fight it. And on that, the European Union will always be ready. But our approach is always that we support what governments do. We don't dictate. We don't tell governments, you have to do this, you have to do that. This is not the European approach. But we talk to them, and if the government wants to go ahead in one direction, which we think is good to fight corruption, we will certainly be there to support.
Can you provide some more details on the funding set aside for this purpose?
Yes, I spoke of 21 million that we have for the next 6 years. A part of that, and I believe it is, I have to get the figure, but I think it's something around 1.5 million, is going to go to what we call governance. Governance is an encompassing concept that covers corruption, the fight against corruption, but it can also cover the strengthening of the institutions, which is also helping to that, and it can even cover things like the electoral reforms or constitutional reforms. We can support either of that, all of that, depending on what kind of proposals are put in the table. Once again, we do that in partnership always with the government, not only in Guyana but everywhere. So if the government of Guyana comes and tells us we want to do this, rather than to focus on institutions, we want to focus on the fight against corruption, of course we will listen to that, and I'm sure we'll find a way to support. And if they tell us we want to focus now, our priority with you, with the European Union, is electoral reform, we are also very active on that, and we will be happy to help. We will listen. We know that we cannot support ourselves everything, so other donors perhaps can get in and support, and I'm sure they will support the things that we will not be able to support, because we also want to concentrate our cooperation so that we can make meaningful contributions. But again, we are there, the European Union will be there, and nothing would make me happier than to support a project to fight corruption.
Mr. Perez had also talked about the pitfalls of borrowing from China.
Yes.
Following up from that, could you say how has the EU positioned itself to help developing countries like Guyana that find difficulty in accessing financial resources?
Absolutely. No, thank you for that question, because, well, first of all, I have to say that there is a space for everybody. And I think that personally, any help that Guyana can get, it makes me happy. Be it from China, be it from the United States, be it from ourselves. I am proud also to say that the European Union is by far the largest donor of development cooperation in the world. We are not very good at publicizing our own merits, so this is a fact that many people are not aware of. But we are the largest donor by far in the world. And in Guyana we have been, if not the largest, I don't know if we are the largest, but certainly one of the largest by far, not only now but throughout the years. And this is something that I am very happy right now, because another fact is that the Caribbean countries, most of the Caribbean countries, will not be having a bilateral envelope of cooperation development, and we will in Guyana. We will have this envelope. This is the 21 million that I told you about, and in addition to that, Guyana will be able to access another package of regional funds that we have at the Caribbean level, and another package of funds that we have at the continental Latin American level, Latin America and the Caribbean level. So there is a system of concentric circles, but the most important by far is the one that we have at the bilateral level of Guyana. And once again, I'm very happy that Guyana is one of the few countries, one of the minority of the countries in the Caribbean, which is going to enjoy this bilateral envelope.
Just to follow up from that question, what is your own impression of Guyana's political and economic relationship with superpowers like China and the US, and where does the EU find itself in that equation?
Yes, there is a space for everybody. And I think Guyana is following a very wise strategy, which is to be open to all and to all kind of help. We are not, I always say this is not a zero-sum game. It is a win-win. Every help will be useful for your country. And also I think that the European Union has a particularly important possibility to help because we have not been so present in Guyana in the past. Let me say it quite clearly. Guyana was far from Brussels, from our capital. We were not necessarily very focused or focused enough, and now we are. We are getting, perhaps, I don't know if this is, I want to stay humble, but perhaps a little bit thanks to the efforts of my team and my own efforts and the efforts of the people who came before me, of course. The country is more in the radar in Europe, and Europe is much more present in Guyana now. And Guyana, I would really like Guyana to be much more present in Europe as well.
What is responsible for this new strategic focus on
Guyana? What or who?
Both. What or who is responsible for this strategic focus on Guyana? We talk about more fundings, we talk about other countries in the region not being able to access funding while Guyana will. The EU being a major partner here. What's responsible for that?
Okay, well, I think that the European Union institutions are responsible for the relations between the European Union and Guyana. So basically, our two visitors that we had recently, that is why their visit was so important, they are the top managers and the top decision makers within the European External Action Service, which is our Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I don't know if I can say that, but informally I think I can say that. So they are the top officials responsible for the Americas. And Mr. Glynn is the managing director, Mr. Niño is the deputy managing director, and myself as the ambassador, we have worked together all this time to make sure, together with other people from the Department of Development who have been instrumental in doing that, Yolita Buxeviciene, who is also a friend of the country, and many others, we have managed to secure this cooperation envelope. But I want to insist on something which is very important, that our relationship goes well beyond that. So we continue and we expand our cooperation efforts, but even more importantly, I would say, we expand the overall relationship, also on a political basis and also on multilateral issues. We have, I think, interest in working together at the United Nations, for example, or in the international arena, where perhaps other players may have different policies, but I think that Guyana and the EU have a common foundation of values, common foundation of objectives, on which we can build a lot and achieve a lot together for the benefit of both.
I want to bring you back to local politics. And I know you spoke earlier about the EU's principle of non-interference, but even as an outsider who would have had intimate dealings with the current government, I want to ask about your own impression of the government and how would you rate the air-led government?
Yes, that's a question difficult for a diplomat, but I'm going to respond to that with all transparency. We have an excellent relationship with the government of Guyana, which is one of the most important objectives for any ambassador. We feel that we have open doors to the government, and we appreciate that very much. I am also firmly convinced that the government is working very hard to bring more prosperity to the people of Guyana and to fulfill all its duties. Having said this, I have to say also that I am also aware of the many challenges that are in front of this government. And I think if the past has been perhaps difficult, the future is going to be complicated. And I think that the expectations of the Guyanese are very high. That's one of the, perhaps, one of the challenges. Another challenge, and this is very close to my heart, is not to leave anybody behind in this time of new prosperity. because what has happened in many countries who have been blessed or cursed with natural resources is that in the end, the exploitation of those resources has resulted in a widening of the social gap between the haves and the have-nots. I know how conscious is this government of this challenge, and I trust that they will address it, but it will require a lot of effort. Of course, fighting corruption will always be something that needs to be worked on a daily basis, and many other challenges. There is another one that I would like to mention, on the one hand, is to combine the exploitation of the natural resources with the preservation of the wonderful environment that you have. That's what we call sustainability. So in a way, I think the biggest challenge for this government is going to ensure sustainable and inclusive development of the country. Or in other words, that the development of this country, which is happening, is going to happen, is happening already, is inclusive and sustainable. I know they are working on that. I know they are very aware of that, but it is very important. And I would like perhaps to add something. It's not in your question, but it's part of this context. I think this country needs a strong opposition. And every country needs a strong opposition. And I think also that the challenges that are in front of Guyana require not only government policies, require what we call state policies. State policies. And I think that oil policy should be a state policy, for example. But of course, for this, you need interlocutors. And I really hope that the opposition in this country will become more structured and more capable of fulfilling the role, the very important role that any opposition has to have in any country.
I'm very happy you ended your answer the way you did, because I was going to open the parameters of my last question and ask about the government to solicit a response from you on the political climate in Guyana, particularly as it relates to engagements between the government and opposition.
Yes, I think that the political climate is still complicated. 2 years after the elections, I know that the election time is always a complicated time. I think you call it the funny season or something like that. But then things go back to normal, more or less. Now it's taking time. I understand that what happened in 2020 was probably worse than what has happened at other times, or at least longer. But I think it's time to look at the future, and perhaps, of course, like driving a car, you have to look at the mirror from time to time, but most of the time you have to look in front of you. And there needs to be, of course, a dialogue. There needs to be participation of the opposition in the processes. And I would love to see that, and I'm not going to say I trust, but I expect and I hope that both sides, both the government and the opposition, but perhaps in particular the opposition, gets into this new mood of looking in front, and perhaps, if I may say so, it would be good to, at some point, to do some analysis of what happened in 2020, some internal debate, and perhaps in order perhaps to have some closure, because it's important to have closure, and then to look in front. The challenges that Guyana has in front require a lot of effort, a lot of work by the leaders, and the leaders have the responsibility of leadership, which is to look in front of you and to decide what you want to do to help the country to make the most of all the possibilities that you have. I would love to see that. I hope this will happen, the sooner the better. I am very encouraged by as I think I said it already, by the maturity of the Guyanese citizens. I know that Guyana is a place like my own country where people are self-critical. That's good. I have heard many Guyanese telling me, oh no, but this country is not working because of this and because of that. And of course I understand that you have your challenge, we all do. But you have this richness in your people who refrained from violence in 2020 and who are now, I am convinced most people in Guyana are now really also wanting to look ahead, to look in front, and to work together to make the most of this beautiful future that you can have.
Ambassador, I know you addressed the visa issue a few days ago, but even as you prepare to depart, do you have any updates for the Guyanese public on that issue?
Thank you for that question. This allows me to clarify something. First of all, I fully understand the request. I have all the possible sympathy. It's not ideal that your citizens have to fly somewhere else to get their visa. But the reason for that is that we, the European Union delegation and the European Union does not have the mandate to deliver visas. We can't. Otherwise, I would be very happy to do it here in Georgetown. And now the mandate is for the member states, and the closest member state embassy is the Netherlands embassy in Paramaribo. We have been working to try to improve that situation for a long time already, even before His Excellency mentioned that the other day. And immediately after he did, I also called again the Dutch ambassador, and we are working on that actively. Also with our colleagues from Brussels, we have also transmitted, conveyed the concern. They are also aware of that because we have discussed that also in our political dialogue with Guyana. So we are working on that. And by the way, we understand that this is not ideal because our own citizens from the EU, from several countries, also have to fly to another country to get their visas to get to Guyana. So I would be really very happy if we can help to find a solution. And of course, in the longer term, what I would like to see is a system by which we eliminate the requirement of visas both for the Europeans who come to Guyana, for all the Europeans who come to Guyana, and for all the Guyanese who come to Europe. This is more for the longer term, but we are also working to try to see if we can get there.
Ambassador Cantó, who replaces you?
There will be another ambassador from the 1st of September. I'm very happy that he can come so quickly, and I think that also I'm very happy that continuity will be ensured. I have a great team at the European Union delegation, so I'm very grateful to them. It's really a dream team, and they are going to be able to welcome the new ambassador immediately. And he is a professional also coming from the services of the European Union, and I'm sure it's going to be a resounding success.
Can you name that person?
Yes, that's René van Nes. He's a person from the Netherlands, precisely. But he's not coming here as a Dutch person, he's coming also, like myself, as the ambassador of the European Union.
Right. And what is next for you?
I want to continue dealing with this part of the world, but it will not be from the Americas, that would be from Brussels. So I go back to our headquarters, which is in Brussels, to the European Union External Action Service. That's what I like to do, but I will really be very happy to continue dealing with your country in another way, from the distance, but still with the objectives and the interest of Guyana in mind.
What is the personal feeling like leaving?
Yes, that's a difficult one. It's mixed feeling. I'm happy and sad. I'm happy mostly because I leave the country when the country is going up, and this is a very nice feeling. It would be different if the situation was not as promising, but I clearly see a country which is taking off, and with all the possible problems of the future, and there will be many, I leave a place which is better than I found it when I arrived. So I'm happy about that. But of course I am sad because I fell in love with the country. Even before I came to live here, I came to Guyana on mission a few times since 2014, and I liked it from the first time I set my foot here. I was also aware of the many challenges that the country had, like many countries. But I liked it. I liked your people, first of all, but also the culture and the way that you approach things, which in many ways reminds me of my own country. For example, I guess I can say that we don't plan a lot in advance, but then everything goes well. So, and we improvise. That's a peculiarity of my home country, which I find also in Guyana, and I find that very enduring. But above that is that most people are so welcoming and so straightforward and nice. And I have been privileged to be here 3 years. So for me, it's sad to go, but I go with the certainty that I will be back as soon as I can, and that I made good friends for life here.
My final question, what do you hope will be your legacy after you leave?
Yes. Well, I guess that the main thing that I will leave behind is a more solid relationship, a lasting relationship between the European Union and Guyana, and not only between the institutions, but also between the people of both sides. So that I leave a country where I think now Guyana is more on the radar of Europe, and I live more Guyana in Europe because of that, but I also live more Europe in Guyana. And I have to say, it's not that I did it, I contributed to that. So that is my legacy. If you want to speak about legacy, that is a big word. I would rather call it like the satisfaction that I come with me, that I will take with me.
Thank you very much. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I want to thank you very much for this opportunity to say a few things. And once again, I feel privileged for having been welcomed by the Guyana, the government and the people for 3 years. And I'm very grateful that you were so welcoming and so nice to me all the time. And I want to wish the country the bright future that it deserves.
Thank you. Ambassador, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
No,
All
thank
the
you very
best.
much, Gov'T.
Sure.
I appreciate that you came.